Hello, good morning, town. Hey, it's Adam here with Serious Results. Let's talk glycemic index. What is that? Honestly, it's something a lot of fitness professionals use as a big fancy word to wow you with their information and kind of belittle, make you think, wow, this guy's really smart. I should listen to what he's saying. But what it really is it's a rating of carbohydrate-based foods and how fast they digest and how they affect our insulin levels. It's a tool made for diabetics to help them control their blood sugar. And you can look it up online and pull up long lists of various foods. Not, like I said, they're all carbohydrates. The glycemic index doesn't reference meats or fatty foods because that doesn't affect our blood sugar the same way. Now, you'll hear people say, oh, avoid high glycemic foods. Everything's kind of has three sides to the story. There's the truth, yours, and my story. The truth is the glycemic index only rates carbohydrates, like I said. So it doesn't really have a bearing on your overall body fat or your weight. If you have some certain medical conditions, it may. But overall, the thing is, these high glycemic foods, they're too easy to eat too much of. And that's what can contribute to weight issues. Now, this being said, it is better for your health to eat low glycemic foods because the high glycemic things tend to shoot our insulin through the roof and then it drops and it creates a bad cycle. And excessive insulin is very hard on our circulatory system as well as contributes to higher triglycerides, which isn't good for the heart. So in terms of, if you wanted to have a cookie or some crackers, that's not going to make you immediately gain weight. And it's not like that's all you ate for the whole day. The thing is with the glycemic index is foods that are low in fiber or low in other nutrients like fats, they rate very high on the scale. So it's kind of interesting. Things like ice cream that we think of as bad fattening foods are kind of low on the glycemic index. So for a diabetic standpoint, that's a better option than having some tortilla chips in terms of how it affects their blood sugar. Both of those foods are too easy to overeat, so in terms of weight management, they're not the best choice. But like I said, it's neat to kind of look at it and just educate yourself. Things like bananas and grapes rate fairly high on the index. Other things like a Snickers bar is kind of low because, yes, it has sugar, but the amount of fat in the product offsets how it digests. And so what you have to remember is digestion happens. It starts in our stomach and then works our way into our intestines. And our intestine is this tube, that's where the food goes. And it only has a certain amount of space in that tube for the nutrients to seep through the tube into our bloodstream. And so when you eat just a carbohydrate-based food, nothing is slowing down the rate that it can absorb through that intestinal wall. When you mix proteins, fats, and fibers with those carbs, all those nutrients are fighting for absorption space in the intestine. And so they slow each other down. It takes longer to digest. And that lowers the glycemic index, not of a food, but of your meal. And that's my kind of point, is you shouldn't be sitting around eating grapes or cereal or chips just for recreation, for fun. If you are, you need a new hobby. It's not going to work out for your fitness goals. But when we eat a balanced, sensible meal, that's the key, is meal. You're eating when you should, not just because you're bored. That meal should be comprised of protein, a carb, a fat, and there should be some vegetables for fiber. And when you mix all that together, every meal you eat is going to end up being low glycemic. And so you kind of don't have to sweat it. That's the interesting thing. It's not that complicated, but like I said, sometimes people in the fitness industry make it complicated in order to give themselves credibility. That's how it is. But the reality is, if you really look into it and get to understand how these foods affect us, and you look at how digestion works, there's really no food you can't have or you couldn't have. It's just a matter of how much, because that affects the overall calorie intake. And as a rule, it's better to eat low glycemic foods for our health. That'll keep you alive and healthy. Lower risk of disease that's lifestyle related. But if you wanted to have some, let's say, cookies, have some chicken or a protein shake with it. It sounds weird, but that'll balance it out a little bit. That'll give you a more complete meal, lower the glycemic index, and it won't hit your system so hard where you feel like I got to have more and more of those cookies, because the protein helped balance it and made it absorb slower in the system and doesn't set off this chain reaction that makes you go crazy. So, rule of the day is don't overcomplicate it. The glycemic index is a nice tool, but it's not something that needs to terrify you about what you can and can't eat. Hope to hear from y'all. Stay strong.